Welcome back, Night Dwellers. I'm your host, Mothy. Tonight, we venture far from Earth to a cold, distant planet bathed in alien light. Our explorers went in search of discovery. What they found was only the beginning. So dim the lights, and whatever you do, don't take anything home. This is They Hatched Among Us, Part 1.
Tune in close, dim the light, simple dark tales late at night.
The planet hung in the void, a lifeless rock bathed in the cold glow of a distant sun. Its surface was a chaotic landscape of jagged cliffs and shimmering crystalline spires, rising like frozen flames from the barren ground. A thin layer of dust swirled in the weak gravity, disturbed by the astronauts' movements. Captain Dalton adjusted his visor. He had black, layered hair tied in a small ponytail, the loose strands framing his sharp features. His piercing blue eyes scanned the alien horizon, and his delicate lip piercings glinted under the planet's cold light. He ran a gloved hand over the back of his neck, the motion instinctual, though it did little to ease the tension curling in his muscles. The sharp contrast of the glittering minerals against the endless black sky sent a shiver down his spine. A slow breath fogged the inside of his helmet. "Tell me this isn't the most beautiful thing you've ever seen," he said, his voice crackling through the comms. Despite the awe in his voice, a strange tightness curled in his chest. Something about the planet felt too still. Dr. Theo, standing a few feet away, studied the scanner in his gloved hand. His tall, lean frame was tense, shoulders drawn tight beneath the bulky suit. His fingers twitched slightly against the device, his eyes narrowing behind his visor. "It's certainly unusual," he said, adjusting the settings. "The mineral composition is unlike anything we've encountered before. The energy readings are strange, almost like something shifting inside." Lucy knelt beside a cluster of gemstones embedded in the rock, their surfaces shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Her burgundy hair, tucked beneath her helmet, curled slightly at the nape of her neck, damp from the sweat despite the climate controls in her suit. She reached out, running a gloved hand over the smooth surface. The warmth radiating through her fingers sent a shiver down her spine. "They almost feel warm. That's weird, right?" "Weird and valuable," Dalton replied, but his voice had taken on a forced lightness. He tapped his helmet, sending a transmission back to the ship. "Command, this is Dalton. We found something big. Get ready for extraction." Theo frowned, narrowing his golden eyes at the gems. A bead of sweat formed on his temple. Something about them set off alarm bells in the back of his mind. The way they pulsed ever so faintly, like a heartbeat waiting to quicken. "We should run more tests before—" "We'll test them once we get back to Earth," Dalton interrupted, already prying a cluster from the rock. "You know how these things go, Theo. If you don't bring them back, someone else will." Lucy grinned as she carefully stashed a smaller gem in her sample bag. Her heart pounded just a little faster than it should have. A souvenir. What was the harm? Above them, their ship's thrusters roared to life, the artificial gravity tugging at their suits as they ascended. The three astronauts, unaware of the catastrophe they were about to unleash, carried their shimmering cargo back to Earth. 3 weeks later, humanity had no idea what was coming. The gemstones, heralded as the greatest discovery of the century, had been distributed to research labs across the state. Scientists marveled at their unique composition. Investors speculated on their potential value. Museum curators prepared grand exhibits. The world watched, fascinated and unaware. Then, the first one cracked open. It happened late at night in a sterile laboratory where a lone scientist worked under flickering fluorescent lights. The lab was a place of stark contrast, gleaming silver countertops and the hum of high-tech equipment, yet eerily empty aside from the scientists' hurried movements. Their head ached from staring at the microscope for too long, fingers twitching as they jotted down notes. The gemstone, once solid, pulsed faintly, fractures forming along its perfect surface. A single hairline crack ran its length, then another. Their stomach tightened. The air in the lab suddenly felt too thick. Then, with a wet, splintering sound, the gem burst apart. A creature slithered out. It was small at first, its translucent exoskeleton glistening under the lab's harsh lights. Its segmented body, no longer constrained by its crystalline prison, twitched violently, as if adjusting to this new world. Thin legs unfurled like blades, stretching, testing, learning. The scientist's breath hitched, their pulse hammering against their throat. The air conditioning unit hummed overhead, but sweat dampened the back of their neck. The thing moved, fast, too fast. It scuttled across the floor, vanishing into the vents before the scientist could react. They reached for the emergency phone, hand clammy against the receiver, but before they could dial, the other gems began to crack. Across the state, in labs filled with researchers working late into the night, the same scene unfolded. Cracks formed, creatures emerged, and by the time alarms blared and containment procedures were activated, it was already too late. The hatchlings moved quickly, disappearing into ventilation systems, sewers, and dark corners where they could grow, molt, and spread. By morning, the infestation had begun, and it was only the beginning. Back in her apartment, Lucy sat hunched on the edge of her bed, a towel still wrapped around her damp burgundy hair. She stared at the iridescent stone on her desk, its colors shifting subtly under the dim lamplight. Her salt lamp, glowing faintly orange, cast warm shadows across the room. She reached for her phone to check the time, then froze. A sharp crack split the silence. Her head snapped towards the desk. The gemstone trembled. A hairline fracture split its surface. A faint hiss, like steam escaping, followed. Lucy stood slowly, her heart pounding, her bare feet rooted to the carpet. The gemstone split open with a wet pop, and something slick tumbled out. It hit the desk and skittered onto the floor, knocking items as well. The centipede-like creature unfurled, its body pulsating as it stretched its many legs. It scrambled across the floor, antennae twitching, until it collided with her salt lamp. The moment it touched the warm crystal, a piercing screech erupted from its throat. Steam rose from the creature's exoskeleton where the salt touched it. Its legs spasmed wildly as it recoiled, screeching again and launching itself onto the air vent near her ceiling. Lucy froze, breath trapped in her lungs. Her pulse thundered in her ears. A knock rattled her door, sharp, hurried. She flinched, still gripping the edge of her bed where the creature had just vanished. "Lucy, it's us," came Dalton's voice from the hall, muffled but unmistakable. "Open up." She rushed over and flung the door open. Dalton stood there, wide-eyed, his ponytail disheveled and his visor clipped to his belt. Theo loomed behind him, out of breath, clutching a handheld scanner that blinked and whined in a tone too shrill to ignore. I think something just hatched, Lucy said. It came out of the gym. It crawled across the floor and disappeared into my vent. Dalton's eyes widened. You saw one here? Theo pushed into the apartment without waiting, eyes scanning the desk, the open air vent, the faint residue where the stone had cracked apart. We just came from the lab. There were more, multiple, hatched from the samples we brought back. One attacked a tech, Dalton added. We barely got out. They're not just alive, they're spreading. Lucy glanced at the vent, trying to steady her breath. It moved so fast, I didn't even get a good look. Theo gave a tight nod. Whatever they are, they're not just reacting. They're hunting. Dalton looked toward the window, the horizon outside tinged orange from distant fires. We don't know how many there are already. We need to move, Theo said, his voice low, before more show up. Dalton turned back to Lucy, his expression softened. Grab what you need. We're not staying here. That concludes today's episode. Join us next week for another spine-tingling tale here on Simple Dark Stories. If you enjoyed this and would like to help out, please give us 5 stars and let us know what haunts your dreams. Until next time, bye-bye.